So, what do you think of when you think of the word religious, a religious person? What connotations come with that? And in today's world, I'm thinking of things like somebody that goes to church or synagogue or some building and gets together with other people and celebrates that religion. Oftentimes, the typical thing that comes to mind when you hear that somebody is religious is that they are better than other people. They have a moral code, and oftentimes they look down. It can seem like they look down on other people, and kind of like a better than you vibe. And so in today's world, today's culture, we sometimes the word religious carries that connotation of better than. In James chapter 1 in the New Testament, it talks a little bit about what true religion is and how that I just want to explain how that is so much different than what the culture we live in defines religious. And so I'm just going to read from James chapter 1, verse 26 and 27. Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. So there's a few concepts here. And the first is, if you can't keep a good rein on your tongue, your religion, all that you do, going to church, all that you say, you're a God-believing person, a Christian or whatever, that's all worthless if you can't keep a hold on your tongue. And the word that's used here is bridled. In the King James, it's bridled. And so if you think about a horse and bridle, and I'm thinking of the picture that comes to my mind is at my daughter's horse riding. She had horse riding lessons one evening, and one horse got loose, and this thing was he was just unhooked, man. He was happy to think that he was free and nobody was going to catch him. He didn't want to go anywhere that anybody else wanted him to go. He was unbridled and he was wild. He was kind of a newer horse. He didn't realize that he was going to eventually be caught and brought back in with all the other horses. But an unbridled tongue is wild. It's one that just spouts off things regardless of what other people may feel, regardless of what damage it may do. And an unbridled tongue, it's damaging, it's immature, it's ugly, and it wreaks havoc within relationships. And so being a religious person, thinking that you are, but then spouting off rumors about others, spouting off gossip. It's one thing to just be completely honest with people how you feel. That's great. It's a different thing to tear others down and uncontrollably doing these things. And so that's the picture that we get here. An unbridled tongue just completely makes any kind of religion that you think you have completely vain. Now, in the next verse, it doesn't really give us a definition of religion, but instead it presents a very simple fact that genuine religion is life-changing. Genuine religion is more than external. It should come from a inner spiritual reality that expresses itself in love toward others. And so Jesus loves me. And then that love that I have accepted, that love that I have engaged in and allowed to seep deep in my soul and in my heart, I'm allowing to transfer that. I'm allowing that to just transfer through me onto others. That's what religion, that's what the Christian religion really is all about. It's not about looking down on someone, saying that you're better than them, saying, well, I don't do this, I don't do that. That's not what it is. That's a lie. Thinking that you're better than someone because you're a certain religion, that's a lie. So the interesting thing here is that religion that God our Father accepts as pure, in verse 27, it's looking after orphans and widows. And, back in the day, orphans and widows were the ones that really couldn't do anything for themselves. So a widow, back in the day, pretty much the bread was brought home by the man. The women didn't have a whole lot of rights and weren't able to make a living for themselves. So if their man died, they were out of luck, up the creek without a paddle. They had no way to make a living. They had no way to keep their property. And oftentimes, they were out on the street. Orphans, oftentimes, same thing would happen. Today, there's kind of a disconnect. When we hear the word widows and orphans, there's just this disconnect because, in today's world, we know that there's plenty of state assistance. There's plenty of orphanages out there that, care for orphans. And then there's a system in place to help people that are looking to adopt, to have that opportunity. And then oftentimes widowers are doing just fine financially, or widows are doing fine financially because their husbands passed away, and then, they're making a living for themselves, and they've got a life insurance policy. So in today's world, this just doesn't seem to fit. But back in this day, widows and orphans had no way to help themselves. Now, in today's world, there's different kinds of people that have no way to help themselves. And oftentimes, we don't recognize it at all. And true religion, if you've really got it, you won't let it pass you by when you have the opportunity to help someone that can't help themselves. Here's a few examples of people who need someone that has true religion living inside their heart. So picture for a moment someone that is addicted. I don't know to what, but oftentimes years of addiction, I'm not saying it's a disease, but I am saying that years of addiction can bring a person to the point where they are just not able to help themselves. They need someone to step in. First of all, they need the Lord and the Lord's help, yeah. But second, they oftentimes need a person to step alongside of them and help them out. Think of someone that maybe that's just completely overwhelmed by stress. Maybe that's stress from the past year that we've had. Maybe it's stress just from things that are going on in their life, but things have just swirled out of control and they cannot help themselves. They are beyond picking themselves up. They need someone to come alongside of them and help them. Think about, there's probably elderly people that and oftentimes they don't want to accept any help, but there's the occasion where they physically fall down, and cannot get back up. And so someone that's got true religion in them, someone that says they serve God and really does serve God, they would take the opportunity, get down on that person's level and help them out. True faith will work itself out in action. And we've all heard the story of the Good Samaritan. And that's a common term used because of that parable. It's someone that'll stop and help someone else they don't even know because they know that person can't help themselves. Okay, so the very last part of these verses here is something else I want to stress. Keeping oneself from being polluted by the world. Now, The Greek word used here, when it's translated, it translates to unspotted, unstained, unblemished, free from defilement. And you know, when you think about this, the world that we live in is it's full of evil. It's full of darkness. There's some really good things in the world, yeah, but there's some nasty stuff. And it's reared its ugly head in the past couple of years, in my opinion. But keeping ourselves free from it doesn't mean that we don't live in the world. Because you could go live off grid and all that, and that's not going to help you. Not in this case. This is a spiritual standpoint. This is spiritual ground. You know, just earlier this evening, I was using my cast iron Dutch oven for the first time. I was pretty excited. I put some these really good bacon wrapped filet mignon kebabs in there, and they just got so darn juicy. But you know, I took the top. It's almost like a real deep cast iron skillet, and then on top of it is another cast iron skillet. You turn it over, and it locks in the moisture. So I took the top part off, and as I was just moving that over to the sink, a bunch of the moisture, that real good juice that comes out of that meat, it fell onto the hardwood floor. I didn't realize it because I'm kind of messy in the kitchen. The wife doesn't usually let me cook. So I had a stain on the floor that wasn't coming out. I didn't realize it. The wife came in and said, "What's on the floor?" I don't know. And then I realized what happened, and it's not coming off. I used dish soap. I tried some other things. I'm going to do some research on it, but every time I look at that, I know that was me. I did that. To be unblemished and unstained by the world doesn't mean that we're perfect or that we're like just doing our best to be a good person. It means that as I see someone that's in need, my first thought isn't judgment. That the perspective and the lens that I look at others through isn't critical, but it's compassionate, full of love and peace and grace, wanting the best for someone, desiring that they're going to be all right, and wanting to help them to be all right, desiring to show the love of Jesus to someone, regardless of whether we think they deserve it, because we know darn well we don't deserve it. And so I think this morning, the crux of what I'm getting at is here. Don't let the typical religious definition that the world has given it, don't let that define you. Allow the religion from James chapter 1 to define the actions that you take. Allow the lens of the compassion of Jesus Christ to be over your eyes as you see others in a light that is filled with love and compassion. So that as we treat others with that love and compassion, that we're operating in a true religion and not some fake facade. And so think of that stain I put on that floor, because we don't want to be stained by the world. We don't want to look at others and look down on them. I know I've been guilty of that many times. But let's see others in a light that is positive and hopeful.